signing in. I think the protocol is to register, and then the link will be sent to you. And there's also a link on the agenda to join the meeting. So thanks everyone for being here this Tuesday morning, October 12th. We're here for the Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organizational Technical Advisory Committee. I am Vice Chair Smidler, Sharon Smidler, filling in for Kelly. And bear with me as I go through the agenda here. Ms. Firestone, would you please do a roll call and certify that there's a quorum?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos.
Here.
Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith. Ms. Walker. Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Here.
Mr. Campbell.
Last night, Ms. Napier asked.
Hanover County, Mr. Vidunez. Mr. Flagg. Henrico County, Vice Chair Smidler.
Here.
Mr. Yor. New Kent County, Chair LeDuc. Powhatan County, Mr. Chardine. City of Richmond, Ms. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Bridewell. Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Rutledge. DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Here.
Mr. Sparks. GRTC, Ms. Torres. Ms. Del Ross. Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Here.
Mr. Ariel.
Here.
Ride Finders, Ms. Tisdale. Mr. O'Keefe.
Here.
RMTA, Ms. Simmons. Vdot, Ms. McAdory.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning. Ms. Mueller.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. That concludes the roll call, the attendance, and you do have a quorum.
Okay. I see Ms. Walker joined,
Okay.
and I think Joe was just trying to talk as well.
Okay,
Yeah,
great. Thank you.
for talking over. I stepped away for a second.
And it's
So we have Mr. Vidunez and we have Ms. Walker as well.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you. Great.
Okay, great. Thanks everyone again for being here. First on the agenda is consideration of amendments to the action meeting agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, we will move on. The second thing on the agenda is the approval of the September 14th, 2021 TAC meeting minutes. Is there a motion or any corrections?
This is John O'Keefe. I'll make a motion.
This is Liz. I'll second.
So first by John O'Keefe, a motion by John O'Keefe, a second by Liz McAdory. Ms. Firestone, could you do a roll call or a vote?
Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos.
Aye.
Chesterfield County, Ms. Walker. Do we have Ms. Walker with us?
Aye.
Thank you. Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
Hanover County, Mr. Vidunez.
Aye.
Henrico County, Vice Chair Smidler.
Aye.
City of Richmond, Ms. Clark.
Aye.
DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Aye.
Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Aye.
Ride Finders, Mr. O'Keefe.
Aye.
And VDOT, Ms. McAdory.
Aye.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. That concludes the roll call for that matter.
Thank you, Ms. Firestone. Next on the agenda is open public comment period. Do we know of any, is there any public comment or did we receive any? Okay. I
We're
will
not
check
aware of
then.
any requests, Sharon. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the TAC Chairman's Report. I just wanted to mention that October is recognized as Pedestrians Safety Awareness Month. So everyone is a pedestrian. Drivers, you can help by slowing down, be alert, give space. It's also RBA Bike Month. And, you know, everybody, just drivers, slow down, be alert, give space, and cyclists and walkers, try to be visible, you know, use lights, wear reflective or bright colored clothing, and use all our awesome trails and sidewalks in the region. So that's it for the TAC Vice Chair report. Next on the agenda is the RRTPO update. Mr. Parsons.
Thank you. I briefly wanted to address the issues with getting into the webinar. I think that I apologize if this is continuing to happen. I wanted to ask everyone to please make sure that these two email addresses are not in your spam folder, rrtpo@planrva.org and cbta@planrva.org. The meeting information for this meeting, the TAC meeting for the TPO, was sent out on Friday, October 1st. And there is in each of these communications, there is a link to register via Zoom. I think it's probably half and half. Some of us are able to get to that and some of us aren't. So I'd ask for a little patience and to see if this can work. Because it does allow you to personalize it and add it to your own calendar, so that everyone has a unique link as a panelist rather than an attendee. And this allows anyone to register for each meeting, to watch, to use the Q&A function, and otherwise participate in the meeting as a member of the public. But it also allows each of us as members of the committee to register as a panelist and participate in that way. So it's an extra step on our parts to register and get the link, but it's a similar process if you were doing, you know, continuing ed or registering for a webinar for a national organization or something else. So there's a similar message that went out for the CBTA TAC meeting tomorrow, and that came from the cbta@planrva.org address. And if anyone has questions about this, please follow up with me or Janice directly, and we can get things worked out. But thanks for your time with that. I did want to give a brief update on the Fall Transportation Forum. We are working to finalize the agenda and speakers for that this week. The forum will be on the regular day for the policy board meeting, which is November 4th, and it's going to be held at Independence Golf Club in Powhatan. For those of us who are newer to the group, these forums are held typically every year, and it's hosted by the chair of the policy board. So this year it's Mr. David Williams from Powhatan, and they are hosting the forum at the Independence Golf Club. As I said, we'll get the agendas out this week and have more information for the forum at that point. Typically, time-wise, it's going to run from 9 to say 11 o'clock, and we'll have that nailed down when the agenda comes out later. I think I'm sharing my screen. The current work efforts to review. Thank you, everyone, for being involved with the Connect RVA 2045 Long Range Plan that was adopted last Monday. And we are working now with our consultant who helped us put everything together these last 2 months to make sure that the The plan is accessible online. It's 508 compliant and can be viewed and shared by anyone wishing to get more information. We are also going to be working for the rest of this calendar year on a citizen's guide to the long range plan that provides direct access to the things that people are really looking for, like what projects are in the plan and budgets and those kinds of things. So be on the lookout for that. And I'm sure it will come back to this body for review and recommendation later this year. There is a lot of work being done on the bicycle pedestrian plan update. And Mr. Riggin is with us today to provide an update later on in the agenda. And our Vision Zero work group continues to meet probably bi-monthly for updates and working on a regional action plan with Vdot and VHB as they work to provide some metrics and some tools for each jurisdiction, no matter where you are in your Vision Zero process to gain some valuable information and be able to take it back and share it with your constituents. The last item on the update is a memorandum that's in the agenda on page 8, providing an update from the last Ctac meeting on September 17th. And as you can see, the topics of review there are we had some great speakers addressing drive to work, an automated driving system project from the Center for Truck and Bus Safety at Virginia Tech, and then an update from Mr. Ariel on Connect RVA 2045. The next Ctac meeting is scheduled for Thursday, November 18th, and information on that is, I believe it's already out. If you'd like more information, you can let someone from staff know or take a look at the website for the meeting update. I think that is all for the TPO update, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Chet. Next on the agenda is the DRPT Transit Equity and Modernization Study. Ms. Dubinsky, are you ready?
I am sort of ready. So give me one moment.
Yeah,
I just
take your
actually
time.
got back to my house.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. Well, no, it's okay. It was my fault to do this. So while I am speaking haphazardly, I believe that also our Director of Transit Planning, Grant Sparks, is on as well. So he will be providing me any assistance on some questions throughout my presentation. But one moment
I believe Grant is on the phone.
Yes.
Yes, he
because
says he's
he
connected via audio only.
Yes, he made the same mistake as I did. But to just give context, I have in the past few months been providing updates on this statewide initiative. And so as we're approaching our December interim report for the General Assembly, we are now doing our initial outreach to kind of engage our partners and stakeholders to let them know about what we are doing with this study. So for today, our focus is, and if you could go to the next slide, our focus is kind of giving a study overview of the process, kind of going over how we are approaching this roughly 2-year study, and then go over the 6 topic areas that the study is going to cover. And then at the end, we'll give a few minutes for some questions. But we just kind of are focusing on the overview. So how did we get here? So this came out of HJ 542. And this was a directive for DRPT in particular to complete a needs assessment that would focus on equitable delivery of transit services and modernization of transit. As we all know, there is always sort of a discrepancy about this level of service that we provide throughout public transportation. And this is our attempt to kind of look at not like an inventory, but just to see how we can level the playing field when it comes to transit amenities and the quality of service provided throughout the Commonwealth. So our emphasis is going to be on transit services and then engagement opportunities targeting underserved and underrepresented communities. Next slide, please. So how did we get here? In addition to looking at equity and modernization, the resolution had language that required us to explore a variety of topics. And so this graphic here highlights those 6 topic areas that we're looking at. Transit accessibility. We're also looking at adequacy of infrastructure, system engagement and governance, transit electrification, emerging technologies, and then transit safety. And as I've mentioned, we do have deliverables first coming up in roughly 2 months. And it's hard for me to believe that we're already in the middle of October for an interim report. And then our final report is due, we've been saying summer, but we'll give ourselves roughly into August 2022 for that final study. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, what is the study going to accomplish? So we're identifying transit agency, rider, and stakeholder needs. This will also develop what we're considering an action plan. And I have had questions about the responsibility of this study as it comes out. And we want to say that this action plan is more about strategies and recommendations and not something that we as a state agency are expecting our partners and transit agencies to enforce and incorporate. We want it to be seen as a resource, not only for our partners, but also for ourselves. There's a lot of information and recommendations that we will also be applying to our policies and programs in order to make what we do at the state level also more equitable and accessible for riders in the Commonwealth. What this will not accomplish is, as I mentioned, it's not an asset inventory. So we're not going out and counting how many bus stops or pullouts we're doing throughout the state. And we will not be singling out transit agencies. This is not intended to make any one transit agency be highlighted for poor performance or inversely even for better performance. This is really focusing on the Commonwealth as a whole and all roughly 39, 40 agencies that operate, how we can help each and every one of them improve their quality of service. Next slide. So as I've mentioned in previous status updates, we are the project administrator as responsible through the legislation, but this is a very big task that we have. So we have hired Kimberly Horn and Associates and their various lists of sub-consultants to help us with all 6 topic areas. Each of the sub-consultants in particular do have a specialty for some of it. So for the areas like what I manage in terms of emerging technologies and electrification, it has been helpful for our sub-consultants to be able to provide their wealth of knowledge from a more national perspective to be able to flesh out some of the details with each topic area. Next slide. So here we are with our timeline. So we started this work this past summer. So for the past few months, we've been pulling together a lot of the data collection, what we've been calling more baseline conditions and needs assessments. So kind of looking at the whole list of data sources, which I'll cover in a future slide. We are now reviewing the baseline conditions and needs assessment as it folds into the interim report. And then over the winter, we'll be working on our action plan with the final report. We say spring, but probably more summer, depending on how many comments and review we have for the report. Next slide. So this is kind of where we started with the data collection. And so this probably was the biggest bulk, looking at the whole litany of studies and reports that we had available to us. So starting with our transit development plans and transit strategic plans, as well as public participation plans, Title VI plans, kind of going into any kind of CIPs, all the references to our public transportation agency safety plans, transit asset management, census data. I think what is very helpful here to going to note is that, a lot of the questions about how focused we were with transit agencies, there tends to be a little bit of a question of overlap with how much transit agencies engage with MPOs. And so I think that whatever comes out of this plan in particular, we've seen that there's a relevance to having also mentions in long-range plans, MPOs and their Title VI public participation plans, and even regional plans. So like what we heard in a recent update about the bike and pedestrian plan. So those elements, I think there's going to be some relationship to kind of think about with the results of this study and for the MPO. Next slide. So with the needs and opportunities assessment, what we decided with this was that we were going to do multiple public engagement activities and kind of just engagement activities for for this effort. So we sent out just in the past couple months a transit agency survey for our transit partners to fill out. And then we also have just recently launched our study website, which is VA Transit Equity, I want to say .org. And then we also have set up various committees and stakeholder meetings. Just this month, we are putting together our technical working groups, which I'll mention in just a little bit. So that has a mix of both transit partners and industry partners that kind of can give us some background on things that we need to consider as we look forward to the action plan. And then we're moving forward as well with, the focus groups, putting together more of those deliverables towards the bottom. Next slide. So with this action plan, as I mentioned when we were talking about the timeline, it kind of goes from our baseline conditions and our needs and opportunities assessment to looking at what the study action plan is. And we had a little bit of a challenge in terms of using what languages, because it's in recommendations and implementation strategies that would address any barriers by topic area. And what we mean by that is that we're not just looking at what's out there in terms of each topic area. For example, my closest reference is emerging technologies. So thinking about what's established already versus what is coming up or what is being currently tested in the field. And then thinking, if a transit agency wanted to implement something of this nature, what are the considerations? So not only just what opportunities they need to be there, but what are the barriers that keep this transit agency from being able to, pursue and implement certain technologies like that. So specific actions, next steps, what kind of coordination would need to be required, and then giving rough timelines for implementation so that agencies can start being able to do some mid to long-term planning if needed to be able to accommodate for some of these recommendations or strategies out of the study. So as I mentioned, that box right there, we anticipate that the action plan is going to advise changes to DRPT's funding programs and policies. Thank you, Sherry. So it was .com. But it's more about development of future plans. But this is not something that we're going to be asking everyone to, like, as an enforcement, that we are going to push this out to everyone. We think of this more as a resource in a very same vein as to what we think of with like the long range plan. We're highlighting needs, strategies, and then giving that resource for incorporation at a more local level. Next slide, please. So with the final report that is due to General Assembly in August 2022, this will be a summary of all of the study process findings. We will include an executive summary because we know this will probably be a very lengthy report. But some of our key questions that we do want to answer out of this final report is that what will it take for us as the Commonwealth to make our transit networks equitable and modern? And then how can we, both with DRPT and other partners, achieve this goal? And so, just kind of thinking about the collaboration, and then, what kind of resources and, staff do we need to put towards this in order to make things happen in terms of our transit service. Next slide. So as I mentioned before, we had 6 topic areas. And so we condensed those 6 down to 4. And so we have 4 technical working groups that will be focusing. We combined accessibility and infrastructure together, emerging technologies and electrification of fleet, and then transit safety, and then system engagement and governance. So those are the 4. And as I mentioned before, we have representation not only from agencies throughout the Commonwealth, but also industry partners. So that also includes research and academia. We have some private consultants here and there that are working in certain fields, and then also kind of other partners, community partners that are willing to provide the input and engagement. I will say from the emerging technologies point of view, we also have been lucky to get out-of-state partners so that we can get a better perspective on their point of view and kind of some of their barriers and their challenges that they've had in terms of implementing things from their state. Next slide. So starting with accessibility and adequacy of infrastructure, I'm probably going to butcher this a little bit, so I will apologize to Grant as he listens in on this. But this one tends to be probably where I think there's the most targeted part of the study, looking at infrastructure. So how we have connectivity. So it's not only just like the bus stops and the amenities there, but the current conditions of sidewalks, lighting, all those things that we are noting when it came to this study, what was highlighted was just the infrastructure that is being provided on our transit systems. That is probably a major component of equity because that shows what kind of investment there is in terms of the current service. And then the accessibility piece. So thinking about those with disabilities or those with impairments, and then how do people get to bus service? So it's, I think that back to a lot of what we look at in terms of, radius about walk or bike to bus or transit. That's the same kind of component that we're thinking about from an accessibility point of view. But, it is also things about like maybe signage and kind of other components that we may not think of when we are considering some of the amenities related to transit. Think that goes to the next block there. Yes. So then emerging technologies and electrification. So when we talk about emerging technologies, it's a combination of what we already consider with technology. It's not only the, kind of the computer aided dispatch or automated vehicle locators, but it's also then thinking about the future. So, for example, Ctac heard a little bit about automated driving assistance systems. That's the same kind of consideration. Even automated buses. Those kind of considerations are being researched when it comes to emerging technologies. And so we're trying to figure out what's already kind of out there in terms of established technologies. So that's what we're saying when it comes to, CAD or AVLs. Not every agency has those type of level of deployments. And then also thinking about the future, which is kind of the automated buses and then the driver assistance. So for example, driver assistance, I always go back to our pilot that we did with pedestrian collision avoidance. So having sensors so that when buses are making turns or just running their routes, if there is a pedestrian, if there's a bicyclist, even an inanimate object that is going to be in the blind spot, it will give an alert to the operator to let them know that there is something in the blind spot, and so they can course correct or adjust. So those type of safety components, I think that's also what we're looking at when we're talking about technologies. And then electrification of fleet. I think that we have all heard a lot about electric buses and how they've been rolling out more, especially through some of the support from DRPT. But then the question is kind of like, how do agencies get there? It's not only just purchasing an electric bus, but how do they upgrade their maintenance facilities? What kind of infrastructure do they need to consider? Cost for charging electricity? How do they roll that out over a period of time? Those details are kind of being highlighted when it comes to electrification. Next slide. I think transit safety kind of speaks for itself. We do think a lot about with transit of, not only safety on the road, but I think that we also have to think, especially in light of COVID, about how we keep our operators safe when they are operating the vehicles, especially with passengers. So I think with that one, it is kind of a no-brainer when we talk about equity and modernization, is just that you need to have safe, reliable service for everyone. And so I think that's kind of the main focus with this one. Next slide. And then my favorite word, governance. So that's a CVTA reference. So system engagement and governance. So there's also different levels or models for governance for each of our transit agencies. So it's just kind of thinking about what that looks like in terms of composition. And I think with system engagement, this one is definitely something that we are looking at from the state perspective in terms of how do we at DRPT also provide that support without overstepping in terms of our input and engagement on that. Next slide. So as we move forward, as I mentioned, I will be providing in our monthly updates any significant updates to you all. I know that from the stakeholder perspective that you have had Dan Mata on some of our technical working group meetings, and they are scheduled to have a few more between now and August 2022. But this is also an opportunity for us as we kind of continue that process to get the input from our partners and stakeholders. So if there are any questions, you know where to find me. I also provide grants information. He is the project lead for this entire study. So he has had a lot of work thrusted on him over the past few months to kind of get this moving forward. But That is my presentation, and I would be glad to answer any questions.
We appreciate you, Tiffany, being flexible to be able to be prepared to present in person and virtually. And thank you. This is a very important topic, and this was a helpful update. So thank you. Are there any questions for Tiffany or Grant?
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Sure.
Tiffany, the recommendations coming out of this report, you may have said this, but is your expectation that those are going to be targeted directly just to the state, or do you think there will be regional, local type of ideas as well?
There will definitely be regional, local ideas as well. I think there's a lot of focus on us because we are administering the study to see what those recommendations will have in terms of our policies and programs. So definitely from a funding perspective, I think that there will be changes to how we administer some of our grants in order to make it more equitable and support some of these recommendations out of it. But it is seen that we would like to see our transit partners incorporate that into their planning processes. So whether that would be from the transit agency perspective, their transit development plans or their transit strategic plans, but also with MPOs or PDCs or even localities, if there is a transit focus in any of their planning processes, that we would hope that this would provide some information for them to incorporate.
Madam Vice Chair.
Yes, Ms. Clark.
Yeah, I just want to say to Tiffany and Grant and overall DRPT, thanks for undertaking this effort. I think that it will be very beneficial to Richmond specifically, and really to those localities across the Commonwealth that do have outliers of portions of their communities that really could benefit from targeted funding and targeted programs. And I do hope that the outcome is really a diverse funding program for DRPT. And again, just very excited about this effort, and thank you.
Well said. Thank you. All right, so this isn't an informational item only, so no action needs to be taken at this meeting, but any questions, please reach out to Ms. Dubinsky or Mr. Sparks. All right. Hearing no other questions, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is fiscal year 21, fiscal year 24 TIP amendment. Mr. Bushing.
Sure, good morning. Can
Morning.
I share the screen? I don't know who's sharing right now?
See if that works, Miles.
Yes. All right, good morning. So this is a TIP amendment request from Vdot. This is a little bit more complicated than what we normally see. So I'm going to spend a little more time going through the details here. So at the September meeting of the CTB approved the I-95 and I-64 corridor improvement plans. And as part of that action item, the CTB then also approved a slate of projects that came out from those studies. So essentially the recommended projects for the current 6-year improvement program, so FY22 to FY27. So those projects are all funded through the Interstate Operations and Enhancement Program. There's no impact to TPO funding. There were 12 projects in the Richmond area, which will need to be added to the TIP. Most of them can go through the normal process and are taking their time for additional review right now, but one project is expected to start by early November. So it's on a bit of an expedited review process right now. The policy board discussed this at their meeting earlier this month, and they voted to authorize TAC to do the final review and take final action on this amendment. The reason for this is that the policy board doesn't have a meeting in November, so their next meeting wouldn't be until December, which would push the project start back until the beginning of next year. So the hope here was that we could review this and get the project started on schedule. So this project is the I-64 westbound exit at Parham Road, exit 181, and it's improving the interchange. So it's a $12 million project, and 2 phases would be included in the TIP. So PE would be in fiscal year 22, and right-of-way would be in 24, and the remainder would go outside of the current TIP period. So some considerations for air quality. Interchange reconfiguration projects are exempt for the regional side, so we don't need to do a conformity analysis on our end, but it's not exempt from the project level analysis, so there would still be any needed hotspot analysis, anything like that, during the NEPA process. The other key consideration is the public review. So we only received the formal TIP amendment request on Friday, on the 8th, and we are required to go through a 15-day public review period as part of our engagement process. And the public review hasn't been completed. We just haven't had time. So any review does need to be completed prior to approval. So that leads us to the TAC requested action. As I mentioned, TAC's been delegated the authority to make the final decision on this amendment. So basically the options are to approve, to deny, or to defer action. If we were to move to approve it today, any approval would need to be conditioned on completing that public review and not receiving any comments which require further action and review from this board. Alternatively, the TAC could decide to defer the project to the next meeting, which would be in November, which would delay the start of the project because, as I mentioned, they're trying to get started by early November. We have proposed language if you do decide to move forward with approval. And basically this does all those steps that I mentioned. It would move to add to the project, to the TIP. It would include a condition of a 15-day public review and a further condition of not receiving any public comment that opposes this project, which would require further study from the TAC. And then noting that it would be exempt from the regional emissions analysis. So that's a brief overview of everything we're requesting. I think Liz is ready to answer more of the details about timing, project-specific details, and I think kind of the need for this expedited process. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have as well.
Thank you, Miles, for the information. Are there any questions for Miles or Liz about this TIP amendment? Hearing none. I make a motion to approve this TIP amendment for what is on the screen in front of us with the following conditions. Do I have a second?
This is Liz. I'll second.
Ms. Firestone, will you please do a roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos.
Aye.
Chesterfield County, Ms. Walker.
Aye.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman. Do we have Mr. Coleman?
Aye.
Thank you. Hanover County, Mr. Vadunez.
Aye.
Henrico County, Vice Chair Smidler.
Aye.
City of Richmond, Ms. Clark.
Aye.
DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Aye.
GRTC, Ms. Robinson.
Aye.
Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Aye.
Ride Finders, Mr. O'Keefe.
Aye.
Vdot, Ms. McAdory.
Aye.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. That concludes the roll call for that item.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Regional Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan update from Mr. Riggin. It's an informational item.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to try to get my screen shared. Everybody able to see it said Bike Ped RVA 2045 draft?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. Thank you. Well, we have presented this story map, and I'm just going to sort of walk through this a little bit this morning. We've presented earlier drafts of this to our steering committee, but it's been a while since we presented to TAC itself. I know there's a lot of overlap in this committee, and I'm sorry, in TAC with the steering committee. But we've made a lot of changes as we're going, as we continue to add information and improve our graphics and update our data for the Bike Ped plan. So I'm just going to walk through some of this. I'm sure there'll be questions. I'm also going to provide the link to this presentation or to the story map so that you can, examine it on your own later on. It is the same web link that we've had before for story maps, just for everybody who's seen it before. So I'll be skipping through some of these things because it is information that you've seen before. But there, like I say, there's a lot of sections that we've updated. Especially, I need to say thank you to Dan Mata on our staff. He's been working very heavily on this, and like I say, trying to use a lot of the graphics that we're going to be having in our Bike Ped plan as we go on. So yes, we've been working on this since January. I'm sorry. Yes, January of 2020. So it's been a while as we've made our way through this. We've incorporated in part of this, with partners, some of the previous work we've done with like Smart Growth America, as we worked with them on our Complete Streets efforts. So, trying to incorporate a lot of safe streets. Why are we actually trying to have a Bike Ped plan? And obviously safety is one of the bigger concerns, and more as we try to have a safer space for cyclists and pedestrians to move throughout the region. So we've covered a lot of data in here, and the safer by design, or I should say dangerous by design, as I see here with Smart Growth America, we incorporated a lot of their information to help inform our plan. So obviously, like I say, I'll be skipping through some of this, but slower speeds, obviously you have a greater chance of survival if there was a collision or a crash with a cyclist or a pedestrian. So we try to incorporate a lot of this data as we go. Obviously in our region, we've been tracking for years crash data for cyclists and pedestrians in each of the localities. As you can see by this bar, City of Richmond has the highest number of bicycle and pedestrian crashes. It's just more dense. There's more activity. Henrico and Chesterfield, obviously these are the more populated areas as well. Obviously, as we are going through, we are tracking the fatalities and severe injuries. The number of bike fatalities has been going, it's still pretty low. This year, actually, we don't have the data for 21, but we've seen a spike in bike fatalities. Pedestrian fatalities have been higher than we would like as well. I mean, we're looking at where we'd like it to be zero. So that's we're looking at ways to help improve within the systems. Same here with severe injuries. The numbers have been somewhat consistent and yet still a little too high. So as a part of this, and as I say, this top bar here kind of has the the main components, the main areas within our plan here. We're getting into the process now. Like I said, we started in January of 2020. We've been working for quite a while. There's this little number here shows how many meetings we've had with our steering committee. We've actually had 9 total meetings with the steering committee, and thank you very much to everyone who's been participating with us. We're actually at the stage now where we're getting some turnover because it's taking, our process has gone on long enough, and folks have moved on from jobs within each of the localities. So we're having some new people come in here towards the later stages of our process. This part of the timeline shows, we've had bike and ped as part of the Connect RVA 2045 process. We participated with the online presentations, the wiki map, and got a lot of great comments from people throughout the region on different elements of our bike ped planning, areas of need, areas of the region that where they sought improvements. A lot of comments, obviously, on our bigger projects, the known projects like Fall Line, and connectivity places toward existing infrastructure like Capitol Trail, things like that. Here we are in October, and we're hoping to have another meeting either at the end of October or beginning of November with our steering committee, and then we're looking to begin our public engagement process in December. This is excuse me. This is bike ped public engagement, separated from the Connect RVA 2445 public engagement. So then we would go into hopefully, January, February, and then looking for plan adoption in March. So we've got some work to do to get to that stage. We're not sure yet what the public engagement will involve. Excuse me. We're going to probably need to have some assistance. We've been looking at potential, help like we had with our 2045 plan for that public engagement. But as you all probably know very well, the bike and ped community in Richmond in this area is pretty well engaged, and we're looking to find meetings where we might be able to join in and participate. So if you have any ideas to share with us, especially as we come to our steering committees, where we can join in on other existing meetings, or present to groups to try to have a wide array of places where we do engage the public on this plan. So like I said, many of you have been participating with our steering committee. Excuse me. And we've had this a public engagement through the Connect RVA 2045 process. I'll go ahead and move through this. I'm sorry about my voice. So as a part of the responses, though, we've through our online surveys and so on, one of the questions, how should the money be spent? Money allocated within the region. Obviously, we had a very pro bike and ped response with 19 out of $100, $19.30 should be spent on bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. Clearly, that isn't the allocation number, the percentage that we have within our region, but obviously that shows a very pro bike ped response within our grouping. Obviously, with transit, again, they're so highly connected, bicycle and pedestrian and transit use. So I won't linger on this much, but like I say, I'll provide the link. You can look through some of this yourselves. This is some of the information here, definitions and so on that we, and the shared use path. So many of these we've had as part of this presentation for a long time, so I won't linger here. In our vision, we've sort of improved the visuals here, but it's the same information. Our guiding principles have remained the same. Like I say, some of this is as we're moving toward having the presentation, the actual plan itself. We've improved the visibility of the goals. Nice graphic here. But again, these are all items as we are going through and improving. So I won't linger here. Let me go ahead and skip down to approach. So again, this is part of the process we presented before. We're, sort of now I'm showing off our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, challenges. This is probably too small to read. Like I said, again, I will provide the link and you can see for yourselves. We have a series of parts of this map, of our story map here, that show off, the different, data that we have collected and analyzed with our efforts here at Plan RVA. We've done the bridges and culverts report. We've incorporated a lot of that information. Obviously, we have existing rail lines which present opportunities or are weaknesses we have to get across or around, rail and rivers in this area or bodies of water. So it's different challenges that we have to face. Pedestrian and crashes and injuries. We've collected that data and continued to update that throughout. Health opportunity. Again, we're analyzing the data where people, we're seeing the greatest areas of need for health opportunities, for environmental justice. And, we looked at activity centers which, again, this is all shared data from our long range transportation plan. So you're very familiar with a lot of this data from other parts of Plan RVA's planning process. We also include, power line and transmission line, in our plan, in part because there's opportunities there to be able to work with the power companies to perhaps provide, a shorter connection for bicycle and pedestrian, multi-use paths that are away, separated from roads and would cut through. I know a lot of fall line, especially as we look at Henrico and Chesterfield, there's a lot of potential for power line, areas to be incorporated into the path for fall line, which is a great opportunity for us. Of course, we collected a lot of data, excuse me, all the opportunities to connect schools, parks, major destinations and all that as part of this with bike and pedestrian infrastructure. Connecting again with, public transit is a huge part of our goal. You can see BRT is that green line in there. Then more of the local lines are in blue. So yeah, we're continuing to analyze a lot of the different developmental areas in the areas, mixed use, residential projects that we've, sort of tracked to highlight as potential areas that, where we can, improve the bike and ped connections. This level of stress is another part of our analysis. I know we presented on this before, but it's really just trying to measure within roadways, with the areas that are lower stress, like say residential neighborhoods, or obviously existing bike and ped infrastructure that is, felt, where people feel safer, or you would feel safer for a younger or a novice rider to be, versus the least safe. The highest level of stress would be, biking along a very busy roadway, Patterson Avenue, for example, in Henrico, where there's not an existing bike infrastructure, separated, space. Areas like that would be high stress. So we've analyzed that data. It's part of our mapping. As you can see here, it's very busy. It's easier to analyze when you kind of zoom into smaller areas. But again, this is something you can, when I provide the link, you can see on your own. One of the things that we've been working on the most and most recently is our big ideas. And this is going to be an area that we expect we'll get a lot of feedback from not only our steering committee, but from our, the public. But these regional big ideas establish the Virginia Capital Trail and the fall line as major as main regional arterials. Capitol Trail already exists, but the idea of connecting a lot of the planned routes to the Capitol Trail and continuing the success of the Capitol Trail in a north-south direction with the fall line, and as we potentially could continue westward to go from the city through Henrico into Goochland and Chesterfield and Powhatan on the south side. Prioritize equitable completion of spur networks that tie into regional arterials. The idea of each of those larger spines, the Capitol Trail, Fall Line, connecting into smaller spur trails. That's really what we're talking about, and trying to connect within existing infrastructure, existing bike and ped infrastructure to from one locality to the next. Reach common regional acceptance of high active transportation standards. Each of these is explained in here. I'm not going to do a good job, I think, of trying to explain each one. But number 4, utilize bike boulevards and safe neighborhood streets for local connections. We can't have bike lanes everywhere, but the idea of trying to identify routes through neighborhoods, or in some instances where there's a cul-de-sac with another cul-de-sac, how do we potentially connect those for bicycle and pedestrian connections? There's plenty of examples in the region where this is already underway. So we're just trying to encourage more of that. Work with private sector developers to capitalize on projects that incorporate high quality active transportation infrastructure in the regional network. And I think, as each of your localities continues to work on your comprehensive plans, we're seeing more of that type of effort to have the development, be responsible to continue bike and ped networks. Excuse me. And then again, focus on aligning connections at jurisdictional boundaries. Again, we've been working pretty heavily with each of the localities. We've had a lot of private meetings between, like, say, Henrico and the city, or Chesterfield and Powhatan, trying to see where we can make connections from one locality to the next to, a priority, so that, we have a connected network, not just something that ends at the end of that locality and isn't continued. Each one of these conversations has been very beneficial, and I'm so grateful to all of our the localities for meeting with us on these, because even the smallest localities have had some way where they're trying to build a connection to that next locality for cyclists and pedestrians, and it's been it's been very helpful and very reassuring. So again, we have this interactive map. This link here would go off into the greater map, where you can click on and off any of these layers and sort of view it on your own. We've shared it before, so I'm not going to get into that today. Obviously, you can do it yourself. I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the chat. And while I'm doing that, are there any questions?
Thanks for sharing this helpful information in the draft plan with us, Phil. Bike and ped safety and infrastructure is critical to our region.
Yes,
any questions for Phil?
Well, I put the link in the chat, and my information, you all know how to find me. And again, Dan Mata on our staff did such a great job with this presentation, the story map, but we're not done. It's going to keep, we're going to continue to revamp it. And as we go to that planning, to the public meeting stages, we definitely will want to have help from everyone, identifying the best places and times where we may be able to meet with the most people. And obviously we're having to work with pandemic issues still. So have to have an open mind about how we do this. But again, thank you for everyone who's been participating and helping us out. And please contact me with any questions. Thank you.
Thanks. Next on the agenda is transportation agency updates. DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky, you're up first.
Thank you. So for my agency update, I have only 3 items for this month. I've already kind of covered in ad nauseam for the first one related to transit equity and modernization. But just for a quick rehash, just a reminder that we are currently reviewing our baseline conditions and needs assessment right now in this month. So hopefully by November, we'll have a draft report, and then the interim report will be presented to General Assembly in December. As always, information, thanks Sharon for confirming, VaTransitEquity.com. So you can go to that website, find out all the information from my presentation, as well as sign up if you would like to be notified of any major updates via email. Next item is related to Transit Ridership Incentive Program. So I've been providing updates through my monthly agency update, but just for everyone to follow up, applications closed on September 17th. And we received 3 regional connectivity project applications and 10 zero fare project applications, including the one that the TPO endorsed for GRTC. So the total request for the first year within that program is just short of 13.5 million. Right now, we are reviewing and scoring these applications, and we are tentatively scheduled to present at this month's CTB meeting a list of draft recommendations for awards. If there's a request on any other additional information, you can either go to the webpage linked here for the trip, or you can reach out to me and I'd be glad to get information for you. Last item is related to passenger rail. September 27th, we had a big media launch for the the revival of the Northeast Corridor, Route 51. We had the governor and the secretary join various staff and other members of the public for a 5:35 a.m. ride. So this service is now expanding for early morning service and starts from Main Street Station. We'll connect you to Staples Mill and then go forward on the Northeast Corridor as always. This is one of our first expansions under the Transforming Rail in Virginia program. And so we were really excited. I believe the tagline is that you should be able to get, if you leave at that 5:35 a.m. Train ride, you should be able to get to DC by lunch, or not DC, New York. So not been tested by me yet, but a lot of my colleagues have taken the train, and they said that it is definitely worth the early trip to get to New York by noon. So if there are any other questions about where we are with the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority or with the service, they now have their own standalone website. It's vpra.virginia.gov. And that is my update. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thanks, Tiffany. It's definitely exciting to hear about the Northeast Corridor extension launch. Any questions for Tiffany? Next up is GRTC with Ms. Robinson.
So unfortunately, Ms. Torres couldn't join us today, and I do not have an agency update prepared at this time.
Okay, thank you. Vdot, no, Ride Finders, Mr. O'Keefe, any updates?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to update TAC on a couple of items that Ride Finders have been doing for the month of September. We did deliver promotional items to the Hilton Richmond downtown for their Hospitality Week recruitment. We also assisted GRTC planning with the delivery of their new public timetables. We provided data to the Department of Rail and Public Transportation for their General Assembly report. We also had 2 new van pools start in the month of September from Newport News to Richmond, and another from Henrico to Dahlgren. Both of those are 7-passenger vans. So we are starting to see an uptick of van pools starting to return to and from the Richmond areas. We attended the Virginia Transit Association conference at Tyson's Corner last month. We gathered the Tri-Cities van pool data for the fiscal year 23 funding application. We continue to promote Plan RVA's Connect RVA 2045 Connect with an Expert plan to the public comment period on social media. We're working on the Ride Finders fiscal year 21 annual report. And we also completed the fiscal year 21 external audit with no findings. So that was good news, and we were happy to hear that. And the last thing, Madam Chair, is we did win another award. We won the Award of Merit for a shoestring budget of $5,000 or less in the category from the Richmond chapter of the Public Relations Society of America for our Celebrate Earth Day Everyday Clean Air campaign. So that's kind of the one that's the gift that keeps on giving. And that campaign has won multiple awards. As I think you've heard me mention that here over the last few months. With that, that is all I have, and I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. O'Keefe. Congratulations on the award, the shoestring budget. You had me smiling there. Thank you, and for the helpful update. I'm glad to hear van pools are increasing too. Any other questions for Mr. O'Keefe? Hearing none, Ms. McAdory, you're next for the Vdot update.
Thank you. It's hard to go after ride finders every month because they're winning awards all the time for stuff. You guys are awesome. So real quick, a recap on the September CTB meeting. Obviously, we talked about the IOEP projects, of which the Parham Road project was one of them. There were also several presentations, sustainability for Virginia. There was a maintenance and operations review of the program. Some more VTrans long-term risk and opportunity information, the project pipeline, which I know several of you are familiar with. It was kind of just what it is and what the next steps are. The IOAP, which I mentioned, and then transportation revenues and opportunities. That was a presentation by Nick Donahue. The workshop presentation title is a link that will get you right to the CTB agenda with the presentations. They did take action on adding all of the I-64. It was actually the IOEP is 81, 64, 95, 295, 85, and 66. So there were projects added for all of those. And Nicole sent an update this morning to Janice that we can get on to, you guys can add to the web, that has a link to those projects, and it lists all the ones in the TPO area. The next meeting is in October at the Vdot auditorium. The workshop is going to be on the 19th at 10 a.m. The action meeting will be on the 20th at 9 a.m. Another reminder about the local programs workshop that is later on this month, the 26th and 28th in Norfolk. You can, if you've not yet registered, you can still do so by clicking the link. And there will be a smart scale portal and a pre-scoping workshop demonstration, which is going to be beneficial for you all. Speaking of smart scale, I know we're working, we've heard from you, Sharon. I've got an email I got to get back to you on. Smart scale is right around the corner. So if you're not involved with the pipeline study, or even if you are and have other projects you're interested in pursuing, go ahead and let us know. Jake's working on RSTP and CMAC right now, but as soon as that effort is done, he's going to be focusing on smart scale project development, application development, and so forth. So reach out to Jake if you need some assistance, even if it's just updating a cost estimate, or if it's full scale, redeveloping a concept. We need to get started on that. The portal will open in March of next year for pre-applications. Fall Line Trail, most of you were at the CVTA meeting where Shane presented the most recent cost estimate. As he mentioned, we're going to be updating that regularly as alignment changes happen or funding decisions are made. We'll be keeping tabs on all of that. I don't know that anything's changed since the September CVTA meeting, but as things change, like I said, we'll be updating that. So if you guys either have questions about something or know of something that's changing, just please reach out to me, Mark, or Shane. And I think most of you are aware that the CTB approved a $5 million allocation to cover basically preliminary engineering and pre-scoping. That'll also be looking at potentially packaging things in design build or design bid build, which we will be working with you all on that. And there are no public hearings coming up in the RRTPO area. And that's all I've got, unless there's questions.
Thanks, Liz, for the update and VDOT's assistance with the studies and grant applications. We appreciate it. Any questions for Liz?
Yeah, Liz, this is Chet. If we wanted to get a TAC update on Smart Scale, is Jake the best person, or should we reach out to Chad, or who's the best contact for that?
Definitely reach out to the district, Jake. But we're going to need to know when you say update on
what to expect. Any changes? Right. You mean the kind of the same stuff we've done every time?
Right. It's a great question. We would love to give that presentation. There have been no decisions as to changes or an official schedule. We have a Thursday weekly meeting that we asked for that. We are expecting them to go to the CTB this month or next month. What I can do is get you just an email with some what I think is going on, but I think we need to wait till the CTB acts on everything before we give up an actual presentation.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, sure.
So this feeds into future meeting topics. Some of the things on the list were STBG, CMAC application cycle that is currently open right now. Some other future meeting topics are DRPT, Virginia Statewide Rail Plan. And as we were just talking about, Smart Scale Round 5 overview, looking into that after the CTB has adopted or approved the approach. There's scenario planning, bike ped plan recommendation. And Phil had talked about, gave us an update about that. And CBTA project prioritization updates. From the members, are there any other suggestions for future meeting topics? Hearing none, I'll move on to the next agenda item, which is TAC member comments. Are there any TAC member comments that they would like to bring up now? Hearing none, our next meeting is scheduled for November 9th, 2021. We look forward to seeing you then. If there isn't anything else, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.